ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Hi, everybody. It's kind of interesting to actually not be able to see the participants, but I do know that there are 48 participants, and I want to just welcome everybody to this conversation this afternoon, Pandemic as Portal, a conversation on transformation and liberation, and hopefully more. And so I will do a longer welcoming, but we first want to kind of set the stage and the tone and do some ritual before we begin. And I'm going to actually hand it over to Brenda, who's going to open us up. Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone. Really grateful to be in virtual circle. And one of the things I was invited to do was just a little opening, which I've been doing a lot of group calls. We've been calling directions, and given that we're not having everyone, all the participants on, I'll read them myself, but it's usually my preference that we share that practice together. So I'll just read those aloud right now. And if you know what direction these directions are for you, then feel free to turn towards that direction. And if you don't, that's okay too. It only matters that you have the intention of honoring that direction. So this is a way of calling the directions for me. I call 7 directions. Every group I know calls directions a little bit differently. So this is just my way and the way that I've been taught, but I know there's many other ways that have validity and beauty too. So I'm going to turn to the east first and drum a little bit as I welcome the direction of the east. Direction of the east, house of light, land of the rising sun, and the air and the winds that blow across the lands, of open horizons and of the gratitude for new beginnings each day. May wisdom dawn in us so that we may see all things clearly. We humbly ask for your blessing as we gather. Please join us, Spirit of the East. Now I'm turning to the north. Spirit of the north, house of the night, place of quiet stillness of cave and deep earth, place of sacred rains and gratitude for the knowledge and blessings that have come to us with time. May wisdom ripen in us so that we may know all from within. We humbly ask for your blessing as we gather. Please join us, Spirit of the North. Turning to the west, Spirit of the West, house of transformation, land of the setting sun and of autumn's whispers, and of the insights gifted to us. Bless us with the peace which follows a fruitful life. May wisdom be transformed into right action so that we may do what must be done. We humbly ask for your blessing as we gather. Please join us, Spirit of the West. And to the south, behind me on my left shoulder, Spirit of the South, House of the Eternal Sun, place of abundance, fertility, passion, fire, and inspiration, whose warm breath reminds us of summer days. Ignite our hearts with love and passion. May right action reap the harvest so we may enjoy the fruits of planetary being. We humbly ask for your blessing as we gather. Please join us, Spirit of the South. Honoring the earth below, Spirit of Mother Earth, sacred below, you support us each day, welcoming our roots deep into your ground and into your heart. You surround us, you nurture us, you guide us, and you give us sustenance and support. Help us to give thanks always for your bounty, and to let go and to compost that which no longer serves us. We humbly ask for your blessing as we gather. Please join us, Spirit of the Earth. Spirit of Father Sky, sacred above, place where our beloved ancestors dwell. May your blessings come to us now. The countless stars of the night remind us that you are vast and majestic beyond all of our knowing and understanding. Your light shines upon the earth both day and night, guiding our steps. We humbly ask for your blessing as we gather. Please join us, Spirit of Father Sky. And for everyone on the call right now, I'm going to invite you to place your hands on your heart for the direction of the sacred divine within us. Spirit of the sacred divine within us, place of union, love, and reverence. We are grateful for this gift of life and for the love that guides our way. We humbly ask for your blessing as we gather. We open our hearts and join with all of our relations in love. It is begun. Passing back. Walking stick.
Gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, well, welcome again to all those joining us. We have folks still arriving from all parts of the world, and we're honored to gather with you today. My name is Joshua Gorman. I'm one of today's co-hosts on behalf of Thrive East Bay. Thrive is a community based in Oakland, California that brings people together at the intersections of meaning, belonging, the arts, and social change. And this is part of a series called Medicine for These Times. It's an online series of offerings to nourish our bodies, our hearts, and our spirits as we navigate this, coronavirus crisis, and as we support each other and respond together, and ask, meaningful questions together. We're especially excited about today's conversation because it's about a meme and a metaphor that I think a lot of us really care about and, find a lot of guidance just by spending time inquiring into this conversation. So thank you for being part of that. We assume that this is also alive for you. And we're grateful to have you here. We want to share that, we're a humble yet mighty crew of humans here with you today. And really our purpose is not to provide answers and to figure it all out and just, share that with you so we all have that clarity. It's really to be with you in the questioning, to be with you in this moment of pause and new possibilities. We're here to learn together, to dive deeper, into this portal that has opened up and that we find ourselves in. So, please know that, our highest intention is just to be of service to that process and to be of service to life itself. And that's what calls us here together. Just a few technical notes before I hand it over to our other co-host. There is a comments thread or a chat thread, and so you're welcome to share your comments, your affirmations, and your questions. We won't have time to engage much of what is shared, but please share them, and some of us will track them throughout our conversation today. And
you know, I think we're all discovering sacred Zoom. And even though it's a mixed blessing, it's a sacred tool that allows us still to gather in community and in our movements. And so, you know, we give thanks to the tools that support us along, you know, along with the earth that holds us all here. All right, so I have the honor to introduce my co-host, Betsaida Ruiz. You know, sometimes you meet another human being, and before they say a word, there's just like a smile that wells up in your soul, you know, in your being. And when I first met Betsaida, that's just what happened. I felt her warmth and her love and her caring and her graciousness. And I have the honor to know her in my life and to be in community with her and, you know, to be part of the great work of our time together. I'm going to just briefly, though, read a little bit of her bio. Betsaida is a social justice activist, a certified professional life coach who works with people in all types of settings as a social worker, manager, consultant, group facilitator, trainer, and life coach. And really, she supports people in developing as progressive leaders and social change activists. She helps people in deepening on their life path and finding success in their life. And she helps foster a path to liberation, to personal and interpersonal healing, a path of self-agency and inclusive community building. There's so much more to her story, but today, for now, that is all. Thank you, Betsaida, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that introduction. And I am just going to go ahead and kind of set the context for today's conversation. You know, we all met last Thursday and talked about what this would look like today. And the whole kind of quote from Arundhati Roy came up. The pandemic is a portal between one world and the next. And so that's where we continue to kind of have a conversation of what that meant. And in the description that we shared with you, as we are all experiencing this moment in very profound ways, very differently from one another, and definitely believe that change is definitely coming, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to what at the end of that is going to create. But I feel like there's an opening for a great cycle to begin. And as our kind of vision for the next world to develop, I'm hoping that we can begin to look at how do we witness to all, you know, like witness all the unfolding that's going to be taking place, and how we're going to hold it together. And especially since a lot of us are struggling, there's a lot of intense, deep grief and learnings that's coming, lessons of interconnectedness that at this time, you know, there's a transmission that's coming towards us that's teaching us what that is going to be. You know, Brenda spoke about how we can engage in composting old patterns and structures and liberating new forms and possibilities and supporting the deep and transformative potential of these times. So I am so grateful to be a part of this conversation and to have both Brenda Salgado and Tosh James with us this afternoon. So I'm going to just kind of give you a little bit of a background on both, introduce them, and then we can begin the conversation. And I shortened their bios because they have both been around for a long time. And, you know, I met Taj, I think it was in 1992, 91 maybe, with Spirit in Action, which was an amazing introduction to the kind of work that Taj does. And Brenda, I've met, I think it was in the 2000s around kind of the East Bay Meditation Center and other work that she's done. And feel very honored and privileged to actually know you both. But Brenda, I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. Brenda Salgado is an author, speaker, healer. She is founder of NAPENLA and Center for Healing and Renewal. She is and has been on the boards of Movement Strategy Center and Lions Roar Foundation. Her work includes Heart Spirit Center innovative holistic models for healing people and planet, community, and alliance building, spirituality and healing, social and environmental issues, cultural change, and transformative movement building. I just want to add that on top of all that, Brenda is an author and a co-author. Her book is titled The Real World Mindfulness for Beginners, Navigating Life and Practice at a Time and Time. I think I missed some of it. And Time.
That's enough. We can hear about Taj now.
Yeah. And then the other one is Out of Spiritual Thoughts of Organizing, Transforming the Practice of Social Justice. And she co-authored that actually with Taj James and others who did that great work. And then Taj, the beautiful Mr. Taj James, is a father, poet, strategist, ecosystems designer, and capital advisory. He is the co-founder, former executive director, and current board member of the Movement Strategy Center, who's have done a lot of leading work. As part of the Movement Strategy Center, they transitioned into an incubator. Taj recently founded Full Spectrum Capital Partners, focused on Innovation Center together with Karen Zimmerman and Lisa Ross. So welcome. I am so excited and very nervous. I want you to know this is my first time. So let me
We're amongst friends.
So let me just take a deep breath. And I just want to actually invite Taj, who's going to actually grace us with a wonderful poem of his. And then we'll move on to the first question. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for gathering, and a lot of gratitude to the Thrive community. The first time and the last time that I read a poem out loud with other people listening was in the circle with the Thrive community. So so this seems to be the place to do that. So I took my medicine this morning and had the opportunity to listen to Arundhati Roy in dialogue this morning. If you didn't get a chance to hear that conversation, you can find it on YouTube. And she is the amazing human being that she is, and someone who's shown me the power of just listening in relationship and truth telling. And this is definitely a time to be with and tell the truth. So I'm going to share a few short words that I flowed out of me. The first came at the beginning of this process, and you'll see. And the second was a little more recent, and you'll see, because we're going through the cycles, all the cycles of grief and transformation, kind of in the chrysalis, liquefying, as they say in this in between space, and really needing to bring all of ourselves into the newest cycle that's been articulated in the grief cycle, which is the cycle of meaning and meaning making. Because what is collapsing is an old story and a world built around an old story. And there are lots of new stories being told by people all over the world. And the question is, can those stories be infused with enough of our love and passion and energy and care to be the story that organizes the worlds, the many worlds that will emerge out of the collapsing world. So that's, you know, one way I'm understanding where we are, but it's a project of imagination, it's a project of storytelling, and it's a project of grief. So so here were the words that emerged pretty early. Hurry up and slow down. Do the one thing your heart is calling out for. Listen attentively to the faint voice whispering to you, and just do that one thing, just the one thing that the moment calls for. And then the next moment, heart, whisper, joyfully through the tears. The question, so much to be done, so little time, so much time, what to do, who to be. So that was the beginning of this. And part of what I went to is I went to the communities who've provided me some guidance to this. I said, okay, well, let me go back to my medicine bag and see what's in there. So this is what came as I looked to see what was in my medicine basket. Listen and attune, serve and grieve, resist and revolt, care and repair, remember and reimagine, create and steward, celebrate and mourn with speed and perfect stillness, being and becoming. Meeting each moment with just you, with just us, with everything, and nothing more and nothing less. So that was trying to just make sense. And then I said, okay, who else has got some stuff in the basket, right? Who else has got some stuff? All of this must be done with deliberate speed, but not by all. Do your thing. Build permanent community, period, movement generation. Stop the bad, change the rules, build the new, create sacredness, and reimagine everything, right? Movement generation came in early with some reminders that they've been preparing us for this moment, and that's the guidance they've left us with, and it's a very full and rich basket. Build, block, be. Buddhist Peace Fellowship, a very full basket, right? Heal, serve, resist, reform, govern, create. Bold vision, deep embodiment, radical connection, strategic navigation, the MSC basket. Pause, rest, nap, recover, renew, reset, reemerge. Nature, take a nap, crawl into a dark hole, wrap yourself up in your own juices and liquefy. Nothing. What else are you gonna do, right? Unless, what else are you gonna do, right? So stop, see, feel, breathe, set, choose. Choose. Kaveloku Norma Wong Roshi. Stop. 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 Stop the extraction. Because we're being extracted from, and we've become very good at extracting from ourselves. So all things must be done with deliberate speed, but not by all. Do your thing. So that was the first week. I was like, what do we got? Okay, what do you got? What do you got? What do I got? Because I feel like I need to do all of those things at once. Like I need to feel all those things, be all those things, do all those things. Right? So it's like, okay, can I just stop? Can I listen? Can I feel? Just do my little piece, be my little drop in the river. That's the thing we're coming back to as well. That when I was in a conversation with Kaveloku yesterday, and we were just talking about the communities that sort of for 7 generations held the 7 generations and what that muscle builds, right? And in that, like, everyone in the village is holding the 7 generations. It's not just this circle. It's like everyone's holding it. And what is the collective energy of that? Wow. All right. Well, that was the poem early on. Pause there. I was just going to read the first part, but I get carried away, which is why I don't, I just write it, put it out there.
We love
adjust it on your own, but
poem.
That was in my basket. When I looked at my basket, I was like, oh, I got all my friends are in my basket. We got all kinds of medicine. We've been getting it.
I love the poetry on the fly. Thank you. So, I want to begin at, I just like wrapping myself in my own juices and liquefying, and just a lot of the different words of wisdom that you just shared is what I've been feeling. I went into quarantine very early on because I have a lot of health issues. And so today is my 40th day, la cuarentena, as we say in Spanish, right? 40 days. And la cuarentena for us in Puerto Rico has a lot of meaning in terms of ritual. And, it's like after giving birth, the women, wait 40 days before they show the baby. And, they do other things in life where they go out into the world. And so I feel like today is the end of my cuarentena. And that I feel like, okay, so what is it that that's coming alive for me? And in listening to your poem, I have been experiencing lots of highs and lows. And yesterday was an amazingly crazy day, where I had to just shut everything down by 8 p.m. And the miracle of all of it is that in the past, I would have had the day that I had yesterday, and it would have floored me. It would have thrown me into a depression. It would have made me really angry. But I didn't do any of that, right? I reached deep within my soul for the tools that, like everybody has been saying, we have been working towards these times. We've been in training, for all these years. I'm going to be 63 this year. And it's been a long training. I've been in boot camp for a really, really long time. And now it's time to, get out there and really create the changes that we've been envisioning, everything that we've been talking about. So my first question, as it relates to this, is like, what has your experience been with the pandemic thus far, and what meaning are you making out of it, or finding within it? And how you've already begun to kind of speak to that in your piece. So yeah, let's just kind of begin to engage with that question and see what comes alive.
And the question that occurred to me, because Brenda, I love you so much and I appreciate you so much, and you're someone who is listening and receiving wisdom from everywhere, from the soil, from the mountains, from the earth, from the ancestors, from the spirits. And so every time we get to visit, I know I'm going to get a lot of wisdom flowing from a lot of directions, because you're so open to so much. So my thought for you is like, how do you tell the difference between how you're experiencing it and all the messages that you receive? So share with us what your experience has been.
Wow, that's a really great question. It's funny because, not just this moment, but in other moments, I remember in the election in 2016, there were moments where I felt my own grief and sadness, and then I would feel like this overwhelming grief and sadness. But I would know it was not mine, and it's hard for me to describe how, but I remember I went to the altar and I said, this is overwhelming and this is not mine. I'm happy to transmute it and release it, but I'm not going to hold on to this because it's not mine. It's too much for me. And that was me tapping into the collective field. So it feels different. It's kind of wordless when it's mine and when it's the collective kind of stuff. But it usually does feel bigger than anything I can hold for very long. So I think what I've been experiencing, and I'm really grateful to be in a moon circle with a group of women that we've been meeting for years on the new moon and the full moon. What I've been experiencing is this feeling that I think you raised of we've been preparing for this moment for years. I think a lot of the indigenous teachers I have talked a lot about this time that was coming and this time of shift in consciousness, and that we have to choose together and go through together. And also in the Toltec system, there's a lot of chaos and death that happens when you go through these big portals of time from one time to the next in that calendar. And so I feel like 7 or 8 years ago, the land and the trees told me, you have to start preparing for this time that's coming because there's going to be a lot of grief. And I didn't know what it would look like. I only knew it was coming. And so I feel like what this time has been like for me, it's been very emotional for sure, ups and downs, and also allowing parts of my shadow to come up to be cleared and ancestral trauma to come up to be cleared, and then holding space for other people to do that too, and knowing that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing right now if we're going to create the new world from a different consciousness, that we can actually take that baggage in with us. So I've been allowing myself to be busy, but also really allowing myself to rest a lot more. And my connection with the land has been getting stronger lately because we've already been in conversation and ritual, and the land saying, oh, okay, like you have to be more open to share things right now around why this is happening. And yeah, so for someone who's so extroverted, I have been really relishing in the shelter in place and connecting with people, but also having a lot more time to listen to the land. I'm really grateful to my husband because he's been planting in the garden and the three sisters in the indigenous way and having me bless the land. So my experience has been really these extremes of a lot of joy and gratitude for my relationships, for my family, for my community, for ritual that we're figuring out online, together, as well as deep grief that's coming up that for whatever reason wasn't processed by me or my ancestors, and knowing that's actually really sacred work. It's not a waste of time at all. Enjoy to be in conversations like this a lot right now, actually. I feel like a lot of us came here to serve in this time of shift, and I feel like we have gifts that have been kind of sidelined or sheltered till now in some ways, and that the pandemic is teaching me a lot around boundaries, not in a negative way, but in a, okay, it's time to get on the field. You've been on the bench for a while doing doing other things, and there's very specific things you're supposed to be doing now, and be mindful of how you spend your time and your energy. Just getting a lot of messages around that. Be mindful. And that thing you said, choose, breathe, choose, set, feel, stop, see, like all that wisdom from Norma, to be in a very choiceful place right now. That's what it's been like for me.
The last part just reminded me, I was taking some notes as Arundhati Roy was just being so poetic, and when you came back to the choice thing, she said whenever people ask her kind of like, hey, you're the sort of prophet of the new world that's breathing, so like tell us all about her, like what's she like, what's she gonna be, you know what I mean? And she's like, it's such an unfair question because there are a million little tiny decisions that created the world that we're in. And to go to move through the portal, it's like, she's like, it's like unstitching. Like you have to take all of the threads of all of the fabric apart. So the notion that we would just magically teleport into some new reality without having to do the unstitching and the restitching of relationship, right? It's such a colonial concept, such a colonial question. But I was so brilliant when she just like, oh yeah, the choices, every little choice, and the accumulated impact of, am I going to be an interrupter or a bystander? Am I going to listen or am I not going to listen? Am I going to honor my responsibilities to this place and the people of this place? Am I not? Just every little choice, all adding up. And anyway, so it's a time. We're in a time.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, as we kind of think about kind of weaving together some sense of movement that's going to help us move forward. I guess for me, it's like, how do we begin to weave with people that don't necessarily kind of are in sync with what we're trying to move forward with, right? And I know that Arundhati this morning spoke about how there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work, and there's still a lot of people that want to, and right at this very moment in time here in the United States, are working towards policies that are actually against kind of humanity and against the type of weaving that we're talking about. And so what do you think are the ways that we can weave with those folks, if that is even possible, right? My Buddhist practice training actually, and other types of work that I've done in nonviolent communication and transparent communication, right? All of that feels like there's an opening towards that train that can go through the portal, and it takes a lot of time, and a lot of fear is involved in that. So I'm just kind of wondering what yeah, if you could share your wisdom.
Are you talking, Taj? Because you're on mute.
I was wondering if you'd like to begin.
If I would like to begin?
Brenda.
Yeah. Brenda, go ahead.
Yeah. And answer. I think. Why don't you share first your sense of that?
¿Tú me estás hablando a mí? Sí, okay. So, so I've had experiences where, I was with talking with a friend, and she has done, so Linda Stout, who's Spirit in Action, she does national organizing for folks that know her or don't know her. And she spoke about being like at an NRA rally, right? And how she just went in there and she just started talking to folks about, what strategies they can use to hold on to their right to bear arms, but that we can come up with policies that can actually do no harm and still be able to bear arms, right? And so, so here's this like old white woman who's in the middle of this rally, and she was actually able to walk away with two young people who wanted to further have that conversation. So I think that for me, my experience of having like conversations that is not about shaming or blaming folks, but that we invite them into the conversation to kind of see what they're feeling and how they think about things. And I do think that at times people will change very quickly if you're not, like this kind of othering that we have done in the past, and it continues to happen in some movements, is not is it's not, at least for me, looking at the humanity of all of us. Everybody has the potential to do good in the world. So pass it over to you both.
I want to speak to just a lot of blessings I've had in my life in different organizations, definitely at Movement Strategy Center, definitely at East Bay Meditation Center. And then more recently, I had the gift of working with Wisdom and Money, who works really closely with an organization called Be Present and the Be Present Empowerment Model. And in some of those spaces, and also with Conda Mason and Jubilee Partners, those particular spaces, we were holding spiritual retreat space for people of wealth who to unpack their money stories, to be in sacred space, to talk about ancestral trauma and challenges some of those folks were holding around how their ancestors accumulated that money. And so I feel like I've been really blessed to be in different spaces where we hold circle with people who are very similar, people who are very different, people who have really different stories than my own. And so my biggest thing, I hear what you're saying about the not shame and blame. I think that's a big piece about the old consciousness we're trying to leave. And stepping in with more curiosity around each other's stories. And seeing if there's anything emergent in the sharing of those stories. And to know that one of the messages I got years ago from Spirit and ancestors was that it's going to become increasingly important to work with people who are like-hearted, not like-minded, as we are in this time of shift. Meaning that there may be people who are politically aligned with what I believe, but they're very closed, and this is the right way. They're fundamentalists about whatever it is they're in and can't see the humanity in others and are into the othering. And we've been well trained, so it's nobody's fault. We've been well trained over many generations to do this, right? But also that in the like-hearted thing, that there's a capacity to be curious about each other's stories, to try to co-create something together, to be in that experimentation, to bring my wisdom and my beauty forth, but also to be curious about other people's wisdom and beauty. And that's an iterative, experimental, tinkering design kind of process, not a I'm trying to control this group of people process. And that I've been really pleasantly surprised over my entire life that I've met people who were like-hearted from all walks of life when I allowed myself to get curious about them.
Just feeling and resonating with the wisdom in the practice that the both of you have already shared. And I think this is, this particular question is the one that's kind of like deepest in my heart in a very particular way, because on the one hand, what we know is what this virus is reminding us is that we are all like biologically connected. We are all interconnected and interdependent. But if you thought you could exist separate from the rest of life or the rest of humanity, the virus itself is sort of revealing the lie of separation, supremacy, and sameness, right? That's the 5,000-year-old story that's collapsing, right? So the virus is helping to collapse that story by apocalyptically revealing the truth of who we are, which is our interdependence. So within that, we have to have stories, and we have to be in relationship in which we experience meaning and belonging. That is our deepest need, meaning and belonging. And it is a profoundly human need, and all humans need it. The people who at this point are engaged in a process of trying to first kill us and then kill all life on Earth, you know, they are a part of a death cult, and they worship a certain kind of death. Sometimes we call that whiteness. Like, it is the death cult of whiteness, the lie of separation and supremacy, right? The belief that humans are separate and superior from nature, that humans are male, nature is female, right? And then you racialize that 500 years ago. You say, humans are male and white because we invented this thing called whiteness, and we mapped it onto the lie of separation and supremacy, right? 300,000 years of human life, 12,000 years of agriculture, 5,000 years of patriarchy, 500 years of race. So, you know, people have different numbers in terms of this age transition. Like Brenda's got a very specific number from actual authority. I just, you know, I like the 5,000 because it's whatever. But that, like, we are in the end of a 5,000 year age, right? That's the moment that we're in. And another chance like this is not going to come around for another 5,000 years. So we better make the best of it. So what I just told a story of meaning, belonging, interdependence, interconnected. We're stuck with each other, right? So if that's foundational, right? But the real issue is the issue of power, right? We actually, like, we have a democracy crisis, we have an ecological crisis, we have a health crisis, we have a crisis of power. All of those things are a crisis of power, and how power is defined and how power is culturally and structurally organized. Because there are 4 dimensions of power: the spiritual dimension, the cultural dimension, the political dimension, and the economic dimension. The spiritual dimension is, who am I and who are we? Do we know who we are, right? Do we know who we are? And do we know that we are all related? Yes or no? Right? That's the spiritual question. You get that wrong, you get everything else wrong. You get that wrong, you get everything else wrong, right? You can't fix the political without the spiritual revolution. You can't fix the economic without the spiritual revolution, right? Spiritual cultural story. We have a power problem. So the thing that's important in our movements is that, like, we kind of have there's a part of us that likes not being powerful because we associate power with domination and violence. We haven't had the experience of power with. Very few of us have had really a lot of experiences of, like, mutuality, right? Not domination. Power is domination. So we kind of just, like, we don't want power. The problem is we need to empower love as the organizing, operating system of the planet. And we have to do that fiercely, and we have to do that with more energy, because essentially, like, evolution is an energetic process. Like, how you go from simple life to complex life, you have to cross an energetic chasm. And if you've watched any science fiction or read any Octavia Butler or tried to do any time travel, you have to solve an energy problem, right? To get through a portal, right? It's an energy problem. And that energy is love. And the only question is, how much love can we release and allow to flow? That is what determines what's going to be on the other side of the portal. And right now, the people who are fearful and hateful, they are bringing more energy and conviction and passion to their fear and hate than we are bringing to our love. And that's not true. As I said that, I'm like, that's a lie. That's not true. We have to make our love more visible. Let me put it that way. Because we actually have a lot more of it, but we don't. I don't say we don't believe in it, but we don't think it should be the governing principle, right? Because that would mean we're responsible for everyone, even the people who want us to be dead. We're responsible for their well-being. We're responsible for their joy, and we're responsible for their thriving. It's called All Under Heaven Intact. Sun Tzu, Art of War. All under heaven intact. So that's what it means for our resistance movements to become governance movements, is that you take sacred responsibility for the whole of creation, right? And we empower that sacred responsibility with everything we've got. That's the task, I think. For if you're showing up on this call, everyone in this call has a little part to play. And again, it's like, you don't do everything. It's just like, it's every little choice, every little decision, every little choice. It's just like every little thing, bringing love to every little thing. That's it. It's all we got to do. It's huge, and it's just like this. It's as small as it could be. Anyway,
So
I have some feelings about
I
this.
think that's, I think, if they, like Marianne Williamson tried to bring in love into the presidential uh, uh, struggle. I call it a struggle. I don't call it anything other than that. And so for me, like, so I feel like that's love is a leverage point, right? Because it actually fits in right next to the question of like, what are the other leverage points for social justice and equity that we should be mobilizing at this moment? Like, what is it else that I think folks, when I looked at the questions that were going through this morning, like people are really wanting strategies. They're wanting like like a recipe of how do I do this? How do I get there? And I even think like love in terms of social justice and economics and even having a feminist lens on movement building. I think we still have a lot to learn about what that looks like and what it feels like. And so for me, I've had the greatest opportunity at this moment in time. I'm gonna cry, but they're tears of joy because, through my connection with Thrive East Bay, I've been supported in so many ways that I have never ever imagined, right? And that takes several things. One is the realization that I have community that I can actually reach out to. And the other thing is that community I have had to develop a relationship within that community to trust enough to be able to reach out to them. And that these are wonderful, beautiful people that I have in my life, not just in Thrive East Bay, but in my Boricua community, my spiritual community. Like I have different places where I am able to actually thrive through that love. And so I'm recognizing it now, and I didn't before. And I've been doing this work for a long time, as I said earlier. But like this is evidence-based research for me that's happening at this moment of how love shows up. And so I want to just hear more about that and like give us kind of like your ideas of what these other tenets could be.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for your tears and making this very real, because sometimes we can get in a very theological, philosophical place about it. And the reality is it's all about relationship, everything as the foundation, right? I know that when right before the shelter at place thing came through, I remember getting a message. Spirit told me I had to go see my parents and bring them some natural medicine stuff. And I was also told about a week before that, this is probably the last time you're going to see them for a little while, so get them on Zoom. and that was the message in January of getting on Zoom, right? It was like, you got to get a Zoom account. You got to get a Zoom account in January. And I didn't really know why at the time. But there was something in me that said, I have to prepare our home with the resources we need. And I need to make sure that the communities that I hold space for, my family, the Moon Circle, and several others, that we all got organized so that we could still stay in touch by Zoom. And then a couple days later, the shelter at home place thing came into effect. And we're already in the process of how are we going to still stay connected? And so I'm really grateful for that guidance. So that feels really important. The rushing to do before the relationship is part of the old system that's dying.
Yeah.
And that's Arundhati spoke to that this morning, that everybody wants the answer of the thing I need to do right now. But my instinct, I went into pure instinct of like shore up relationships and how we're going to stay in touch. And I remember reading an article that said your first couple weeks in a disaster zone, that's what you're supposed to do. Shore up your relationships, make sure your people are okay, get food, get preparations. And then after that, you can slow down and feel what you're feeling of being in that disaster. And then after that, there's an emergent of a new normal, new routine, new what are you going to do now in this new situation. But that doing can't actually come for a little while. So that feels really important to name. I think it also feels really important to name even the way we talk about our own stories is important. I remember in some of the Jubilee partner gatherings, there's a woman named Alpha Demelesh that was there, and I was really struck by how we were talking about white privilege and money, and you know how money needs to flow, so it's helping more people, it's more equitable, and all those things. And she also spoke to something that really resonated for me as an Indigenous person about, yes, there's people who have wealth privilege, but there's some of us who have belonging privilege. Meaning we know how to belong to the land that we're on. We know how to belong to our ancestors. We know how to belong to our community, and how to, in the face of hardship, create economies that take care of each other and that are much more informal. And so a lot of the stories that I heard, not all of them, but a lot of the stories I heard when I was in those spaces of people of wealth who were spiritual and trying to be different, and figure out what their path was with their money that was sacred. A lot of them talked about, especially if they're people who weren't born of wealth, how when they moved into that world, they stopped belonging. That people stopped talking to them, people saw them as the enemy, or as a meal ticket, or like they stopped seeing them. And they started to become very afraid and very lonely in some cases. And I've never had that experience in my family, right? My parents were working class, but we always had each other. And if someone was in trouble, they helped each other out. And so I have a different mindset around, say, my husband, who was raised here and European American descent. He feels like he has to do everything by himself because that's what he was taught. And that if he can't do everything by himself, he's a failure. And of course, the world feels really hard if you're not in community, right? And so I feel like it's really important to build the community spaces like Thrive East Bay and others where people are feeling connected. This is where the conservative right has been very successful in their churches. Marianne Menilov talks about this a lot, how they're good at engaging people and talking to them about their needs and their feelings, and making them feel a sense of community. And then sometimes that can be used for harm, for sure. That loyalty can be used for harm. But the truth is we all need community and we all need belonging. And Alpha had said, she was raised in Ethiopia, I believe. And she said she realized at some moment that she had belonging privilege. She was raised in a culture and in a society where she belongs to the world. She belongs to the earth. She belongs to her family. She belongs to her community. And I have that same sense because of how I was raised. So I feel sometimes if we're asking wealthy people to give up their wealth privilege, those of us who have belonging privilege, instead of people who haven't experienced that or are new to it leading right now, to really look to people who have a deep embodied feeling of that. Even Arundhati talked about that today. She said one of the greatest lessons she had was working with the anti-dam movement in India and the indigenous people there fighting for the land. And she said there's two imaginations. One is that the bauxite on the flat top mountain is doing nothing unless you take it out and sell it to make aluminum. Profit, profit, profit. The other imagination is that the bauxite is only worth something if you leave it in the mountain, because for the indigenous people there, they understand that that mountain holds water when it rains, and then that goes into the valley and then allows the food to grow there. So that's a really ancient intelligence and a different story. So I really do feel like there's this curiosity about community, curiosity about a different story that we need to cultivate.
Taj, do you have anything to add to that piece?
I think the thing that it just keeps coming back to me, and just appreciating all the folks who who have maintained their relationship to the land, or who are reweaving their relationship to the land and thinking about the soil, and that really being sort of our relationship to each other in our communities and this work of building beloved community, and then just reestablishing our relationship to everything else through just putting our hands into the soil and feeling and listening. And from there, we can.
I think you're muted. You're muted.
Mute. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Repeat what
Yeah.
you just said.
Yeah. So just appreciating the folks who've maintained or who are building their relationship with land and soil. And that's a really important part of what we need to come back to. It's just sort of reconnecting to place and building beloved community within place. And it's interesting if we I think about Thrive as one of those communities and places that are doing that beloved community work that Martin Luther King called for, and Grace Lee Boggs taught us so much about, this beloved community work. And that's really, for King, it was, racism, misogyny, greed, and militarism. Like, those are the values that organize the world, and the radical revolution of values, like what that takes us to is beloved community. And it gets back to the earlier question you were asking with Saida, because the thing about beloved community, it's like, beloved community is a community in which all are welcome,
Right.
in which we do the hard work of being in right relationship with everybody. And as you were saying before, Brenda, and like having the clarity to set boundaries so that there's safety and protection and wellness within those relationships, right? So it's not just that we're in relationship in whatever kind of way. We're in relationship in ways that can support our mutual health and well-being and thriving. And that's you got to have good boundary setting practice to do that. And you have to feel we have to feel collectively empowered to do that in the ways that we need to. Which I think, for me, that and this is a part of many of the stories and many of the prophecies and many of the teachings. And you don't have to look too far to see that this is happening. Like, what's collapsing is sort of a patriarchal age. Mm-hmm. What's reemerging out of that is rematriation of the land and the leadership of women and girls, and sort of the feminine power in a certain way, because things have been so out of balance for so long. So you look at, what are the governments that are doing a good job of responding to this health crisis? It looks like most of them are led by women. That's interesting. Look in your community, like, what are the, that's interesting. It's not by accident. And so if we want to accelerate our transition through the portal, a really good way to do that is to support, the leadership of women and girls and our gender nonconforming folks in our community. And because we got to bring things into balance, into relationship and into balance. And there's a lot of leadership being shown. And if we can give it the support that it needs, we're going to be just fine. We'll be just fine. Because the leaders are stepping up. They just need us to ask them what they need and make sure they have what they need to help us all do our collective work. So
thank you for bringing up the whole issue of women and girls. This morning, a friend of mine pointed me to an article, I think it was in the Washington Post, about how Hawaii is actually doing some work around feminist economy and shoring up the women in Hawaii, and how they should be kind of like a model to actually share with the other states and other countries. And I guess this kind of segues really nicely with my next question is, how can we take advantage of this moment to elevate a new story, um, rooted in our shared humanity, honoring our interconnectedness and the sacredness of life. And we've been talking about that um, um, mostly up until now. But I want to kind of look at how are we weaving that new story and how are we sharing that new story. And I think one of the things that Arundhati Roy said today, based on a question that somebody asked him, was like, well, how do you do protests in this time of pandemic, right? And she's like, this is a protest. What we're doing here is a protest, right? So I think that we, again, in looking at the ways that we're being in this time, that everything that we're doing is weaving that new story, right? For me, is actually, Brenda, you gave me the perfect words. Is like, I've been kind of sitting on the sidelines, mostly because I've had to make money to live. And so I haven't found uh, work that can actually pay me for my gifts and my wisdom, right? In the way that I wanted to do it. So I had to find other ways to do it. And I feel like I did. I worked for the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, and I brought in all kinds of stuff there that in the beginning they were like, oh, okay, she's too woo woo, but woo woo got some stuff done in a system that like takes centuries to change, right? So I feel really powerful and like I did do something that was for the benefit of all, right? So yeah, I just want to hear, and Joshua, you've been really quiet, and I would love to hear from you also, because
Yeah.
I know one of the things was that I didn't introduce you in the beginning. So I'm gonna do that at the end, but we would love to hear your voice actually. So thank
Woo woo is the new.
So anybody could, Joshua, you could start actually.
You're gonna throw me on the spotlight. All
Yeah.
right. For those who don't know me, I'm a youth organizer. So I work with like a lot of youth and students. And so, I'm really tracking the experience of young people in these times, and especially our movements and our climate justice movements. And so when I think about story, there's a narrative around the Green New Deal, which I think we all know. And I just can't help but believe like that this crisis, this pause, this opening is making way for that Green New Deal, just not to be a vision, not just to be another possibility that like gets another wave of a young generation excited, and then it doesn't happen, and then they get jaded and they go into the system. It feels like the economic depression too, which is forcing our system to open up and restructure itself. I see that narrative of a Green New Deal and its promise, right, for all of us, all peoples, and for our economy, for our ecological systems. I see it just coming forward. So, I think right now I'm living into, how do we lift that narrative up? How do we look back at the last Great Depression in the United States that gave way to a New Deal, and how much broke through there. And so, what does that look like today? And, again, I'm often following the leadership of young people because they are living and expressing the future, right? It's already manifesting through them. And, just to lift up again, the Sunrise Movement, and really all of our movements of students and young people who are saying like, look, we see the new way, right? And here's the story for it. And come on now, like enough with it. Let's make it happen. Let's restart this system in a way that truly works for all. So I just want to sound those notes. And of course, like I'm also caring for young people. I think it's also, it's a it's a really overwhelming time with a lot of big questions. And so, you know, I hope that we can share these stories more so they can find that hope and reassurance and direction.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
I just the thought that occurred to me just in the dialogue between Joshua, you and Bethsaida is just the folks who have really been leading us in this conversation around just transition and the Green New Deal, alongside the folks who the domestic workers who have been reminding us that, like, there is no more important work than the work of care.
Yeah.
Right? And what would it look like if we had a whole economy that had care at the center, care and repair, right? And so this, and it's really interesting how in this moment, the people who keep us all alive, who do the most important work, whose labor and love is invisible to so many, is now quite visible. The farm workers and the grocery workers and the folks who provide care and keep us literally alive, who make sure that we can breathe through our lungs, right? To make sure that our children, our babies, and our elders are like well cared for, you know. So when you describe the work that you're doing, Bethsaida, it's like that work of love and care. There is no more important work than that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, and this was sort of, you know, again, like when you think about one of the many lessons that have come out of the emergence, the sort of recent growth and visibility within movements for Indigenous rights and First Peoples, First Nations, like everything in a sacred way.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Everything is ceremony. Everything is ceremony.
Yeah, and just turning it over to Brenda. You just run with it. But like that, so spirit is spirit, culture is spirit, politics is spirit, economy is spirit. If we do it that way, we will take the right fork in the road. Because there's also a fork in the road. Mm-hmm. There's a fork in the road in the midst of the portal, right? And we have a certain amount of time to make a million little decisions that'll take us down one fork in the road or the other, right? Because there are folks actively pushing the energy in one direction or the other. And all each of us has to do is to just do our little part. So that I don't say that in any way to create any sense of overwhelm, because if each of us just does our little part and we do it in relationship, we will end up right where we need to be. It's going to hurt a lot, and there's going to be tremendous loss and suffering and grief, and that is unavoidable. That is unavoidable, but it won't be for nothing. It will be in service. That loss will be in service of our transformation. And then future generations will look back with gratitude because of the choices that we made.
Ooh, somehow that whole piece was very deep for me, so I just kind of need to take a breath. And yeah, I'm just enamored with all of you and all the people that are weaving the stories and telling the stories and documenting the stories. So, you know, I'm looking to the musicians and the artists and the poets and the, you know, the writers and who right now are struggling and looking for ways of moving their work forward in ways that they can actually be seen, be acknowledged, and have some kind of value to their work. And I know that part of Medicine for These Times is actually acknowledging a lot of that. So we're coming close to the end of our talk, which at first I'm like, oh my God, that's a long time. And now I'm like, oh, we don't have enough time. So I just would love to just kind of get some last thoughts and just kind of anything you want to throw out there before we get to closing.
I would love to share. I feel like the prophecies of the eagle and the condor speak a lot to the time we're in and this time of being out of balance as humanity and coming back into balance individually and collectively. So the wing of the eagle being the intellect, the masculine, the doing, the wing of the condor being the wing of the feminine, connection to the earth, our heart, our compassion, that, that teaching, that ancient teaching from hundreds of years ago is that you have to cultivate both wings as a human being. This is regardless of gender identity, that to be a whole human, you have to cultivate both wings. And so this time, that was spoken was that we'd had 500 years where all this medicine would have to go underground because people who were out of balance, over eagle and unhealthy eagle, very atrophied condor, we're taking over the world. And after 500 years time, in a particular time in the calendar, that a time would come for humanity to come back in balance. So what are we doing individually to be that? And then in the Toltec system, we're moving from the time of the fifth sun to the sixth sun, which is supposed to begin next year. And these are thousands of year cycles, like Taj was saying. But this time of the fifth sun that we've been in for 5,000 to 6,000 years, that is about, the knife of justice, duality, separation from the earth, separation from each other, domination, greed, fear, judgment, shame. And the time of the sixth sun is about stepping into our Quetzalcoatl nature, our divine nature, our divine gifts for humanity. And we have to, it is an imperative in that system to do your personal ancestral karmic healing, to not carry the baggage of that into how you carry those gifts, because you can't actually create the new world if you're not doing that. So this pause is actually allowing us to surface and clear a lot of emotion and trauma that's ours and ancestral, and to see some of that challenge right now as a gift of the clearing, a gift of the composting that we're doing on behalf of ourselves, but on behalf of future generations that are not yet born. And that some of these young ones coming in, and what you're saying, Joshua, they're already coming in at a higher vibration because of the time they were born on the planet. And some of them are carrying blueprints for the new world. And we really do have to listen to them because they're coming in with some gifts and some different ways of seeing things. And we need to unleash them from the old educational systems if they're going to be the creatives they're supposed to be right now.
Thank you.
One thing that resonated when you were describing, and I was just reading some of the comments and I'm glad the comments are saved because there's just been brilliance in the comments every time I've looked over to see kind of what's flowing there. So if you're listening and you haven't gone through the comments, go see how wise and beautiful this community is, because a lot of it's right there. But as you were sharing, Brenda, about the importance of this time to just sort of do our own kind of care and healing and clearing work, and recognizing that, we carry things intergenerationally, and this is a great opportunity to not carry forward through the portal some pain that, we may be carrying from our ancestors, and that we have the opportunity to do some of that healing ourselves to sort of move forward. And it reminded me of that part of the Arundhati Roy quote of carrying the carcass of the hatred and the prejudice and the right, but we're also carrying, it's not a carcass, but it is that those wounds that are within us. And so I hadn't made that connection until you just illuminated it so beautifully. So thank you, Brenda. I can close with one of the things that emerged poetically later. It's shorter than the last one, but I'll leave you with this. And this is what I call an evolution poem, where it's I start where I am and I try to write my way, or
that's great.
Something kind of flow to where it needs to go.
So
I think Taj is going to share a poem.
Is he going to do it now? I thought at the end.
Whenever you let me know.
Go ahead.
Okay. Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. Protect, plant, heal, and grieve. Give thanks to the ancestors and pray for the living. We are never born and we never die. All generations, future and past, alive in one. We are the dreams of our ancestors and the hopes of those to come. We are their memory, their hands, their hearts, and all of their power and possibility. Practice the principles that honor all relations and all generations. Follow the ones who know the way. Everything in a sacred way. Aini, Ubuntu, Kuleana, Kapu Aloha, deep democracy. Mutuality and reciprocity flowing from our interconnectedness and our interbeing. Sacred responsibility for all and ours. I am because we are because they were and will be. Disciplined compassion and love for all, especially in the most difficult of circumstances. Listening and honoring the voices of all beings in all relations and supporting the liberation of all.
Thank you.
So, yeah, there you go.
Wow, you just kind of summarized the whole conversation. Thank you so much for those precious words. So yeah, we've come to the end. I just want to really, so one of the things is that I just want to appreciate Joshua for giving me this opportunity to kind of get my feet wet, so to speak. And if you don't know Joshua, what I do know of Joshua is that he's just this gentle, fierce presence, always looking for ways of weaving and interconnecting communities and people to do the work and to get tasks done. And he is just lovingly is able to push people to do things, even if they don't want to do them. I think that's a joke around Thrive. But Joshua and his wife, Shireen Baldawi, were actually one of the two co-creators of Thrive East Bay with another couple. And so he's still holding down the fort with other people who are amazing kind of leadership stewards. And I'm very proud and honored to be a part of Thrive East Bay. And he actually designed this whole conversation and brought us together to kind of collaborate and continue the design. So I really appreciate you, Joshua. And I want to thank Brenda and Taj for this time. It kind of feels like we haven't lost touch at all in the time that I hadn't seen both of you. It feels like we just picked up where we left off. So I thank you and I appreciate you. And I just want to leave with two things. One is that Arundhati Roy this morning said we need to walk through the portal with power. And, you know, my thinking too is that we need to design that energy that's going to go through that portal before we continue to have other people in power right now that are designing what this next world is going to look like. And they're fast and furious at doing that. And so I feel like we need to catch up to that. And then I just want to finally say before Joshua gives some final words and then Brenda's going to do the closing ceremony, is that I want to leave us with the question that Tosh James used to guide his work with the Movement Strategy Center, which is how do we weave together the strands of the progressive community into a progressive movement capable of winning lasting policy and social change. And so thank you. And I just want to appreciate everybody all the attendees that participated. I think right now we're at 55. I wasn't tracking how many folks we had, but thank you so much. And yeah, be well, be safe, and be peace. Gracias.
All right, thank you, Bethsaida. And yeah, just let's throw some love and appreciation back at Bethsaida for guiding our conversation and sharing questions and sharing tears, and just for, yeah, the force of love and the deep commitment you hold for healing, for transformation, and for liberation. So we see you, we love you, we want more of it. Yeah, and Brenda, may the gifts that you hold continue to come forward in these times. It sounds like you can't really say no. It sounds like, yeah, you're being called forward. Thank you for your gifts, both today and for the medicine you are sharing with so many right now. And Taj, please share more poetry along with your wisdom and your strategic sensing. Yeah, your poetry just holds so much medicine within it. So I hope more of us get to savor that more often. To everyone who joined us live today, and to those who are watching this later on a recording of this conversation, thank you. Again, our highest hope is just that this like sparks the questions and the sensings that are already alive inside you. You know, we're wayfinding together, right? In community, in our movements. And the portal is open. The possibilities are all around us. Yeah, and there is still a lot of process to come. So again, thank you. Again, Thrive East Bay is hosting the Medicine for These Times online series. You can learn more about our upcoming events at thriveeastbay.org/medicine. As soon as like this Friday at 11 a.m., we have some Facebook Live performances with some really beautiful artists. This Sunday, there is a Thrive Together online community gathering, a space of community care and mutual aid building. And just one quick shout out, next Wednesday, we're hosting a really special gathering. It's called The Virus and the Chrysalis, Making Meaning and Creating New Worlds. And it's more of a participatory gathering, so it'll be a Zoom meeting with breakout groups. But it really continues in this stream of like making meaning and really living into and liquefying together and like, you know, asking generative questions from, you know, those deep places inside. So find us online and come join us for The Virus and the Chrysalis. And with that, Brenda, I want to turn it over to you. But again, thank you, everybody. And, you know, may we continue to open in this portal together.
Brenda, before you close, I just want to express my gratitude, Joshua, to you and Bethsaida for bringing us together,
Yes.
but really to the broader Thrive community, because you can feel you all carry and hold the strength of your community, and you carry it with you, and you express gratitude for it, but you also emanate and embody it. And there's a very big difference between talking about community and doing the real hard work of creating it and making it real and meaningful. And you all have done that, and just honored to be included in your circle. So just want to thank you for the leadership that you all continue to provide in that way. And yeah, just deep gratitude.
Gracias.
Ditto to every word of that. I feel the same way. And knowing that we're approaching the time of closing, Spirit is asking me to read a poem to close instead of closing the directions, and I'll close the directions after we hang up. So it will be taken care of, so folks don't have to worry about that. The poem is one that I've been sharing with others, and it's called For the Interim Time by John O'Donohue. So I'm going to just invite you, if you're open to it, to close your eyes and really let the words wash over you, because we are in this portal time, in this interim time. When near the end of day, life is drained out of light, and it is too soon for the mind of night to have darkened things. No place looks like itself. Loss of outline makes everything look strangely in between, unsure of what has been or what might come. In this one light, even trees seem groundless. In a while it will be night, but nothing here seems to believe in the relief of the dark. You are in this time of the interim, where everything seems withheld. The path you took to get here has washed out. The way forward is still concealed from you. The old is not old enough to have died away. The new is still too young to be born. You cannot lay claim to anything in this place of dusk. Your eyes are blurred and there is no mirror. Everyone else has lost sight of your heart, and you can see nowhere to put your trust. You know you have to make your own way through. As far as you can, hold your confidence. Do not allow your confusion to squander this calling, which is loosening your roots in false ground, that you might come free from all that you have outgrown. What is being transfigured here is your mind, and it is difficult and slow to become new. The more faithfully you can endure here, the more refined your heart will become for your arrival in the new dawn.
Ashe. Thank you.
So it is. Thank y'all.
And let them echo to everyone that's in earshot. We're not trying to be the end of the line. My heart combined, body and mind. Life force aligned from the base of my spine. I use what I am given, I am living to shine. Put faith in this vessel to be a conduit. Create something special and don't hold on to it. Let my fables be peddled across the continent. My fate is to bless human consciousness. Under surveillance, gotta switch my cadence. Break my fast, laying words on the pages. Divination, delivered through imagination. Medicine, not for entertainment. Your art will save your life. It'll save your life. My art will save my life. It'll save my life. Your art will save my life. It'll save my life. My art will save your life. It'll save your life. Every day.